White alba truffles. The white truffle of alba is a rare underground fungus that grows wild in the Piedmont region of Italy and remains one of the few luxury foods that humans still can't farm at all. It grows naturally near the roots of certain trees and only when the conditions are exactly right. Because of this, it's very hard to find and expensive. People often call it the diamond of the kitchen because of its strong smell, rich taste, and high price. Since it grows hidden in the soil, trained dogs are used to sniff it out during the short season from October to January. The harvest can change a lot each year, since dry weather or drought can reduce how many grow and push prices even higher. What makes this truffle so unique is its smell and flavor. It has a strong, earthy scent that some people compare to garlic, cheese, and even a bit of sweetness. The smell starts to fade very quickly after it's taken out of the ground, so it needs to be used fast. That's why fresh truffles are shipped quickly from Italy to restaurants around the world. On the outside, they look rough and uneven, with a pale cream or light yellow color. When you cut one open, the inside is firm and light in color, with thin lines running through it that look a bit like marble. Market prices can vary a lot, usually between €250 and €800 per 100 grams, depending on size and quality. Bigger truffles are more valuable because chefs can slice them into nice, even pieces. The most common way to eat them is shaved raw over dishes like pasta, eggs, or risotto. The heat from the food brings out the smell without damaging it. Truffles have been known since ancient times when people believed they had special powers and even linked them to thunder and lightning because of how they suddenly appear underground. Today, there are strict rules to make sure people don't damage the soil while searching for them. Da Hong Pao Tea. Deep in the Wuyi Mountains of China, there are 6 ancient tea trees that are considered national treasures and are worth an insane amount of money due to their extreme rarity, historical significance, and the superior quality of the tea they produce. These trees make a special kind of oolong tea called Da Hong Pao, or Big Red Robe. The name comes from a story about a student who got very sick on his way to an important exam. A monk gave him tea from these trees, and he recovered. Later, after he became successful, he came back and placed his red robe over the trees to show respect. Since then, the tea has been seen as something special, even used by emperors for generations. What makes this tea so rare is that only 6 original trees are considered the real source. They grow on steep cliffs and produce very little tea each year. Because of that, China stopped selling tea from them in 2005 to protect them. Before that, the prices were crazy. In one case, just 20 grams sold for about $1.2 million. That's around $60,000 per gram. It's usually saved for important events or given as a high-level gift. There's even a story that Mao Zedong once gave a small jar of it to Richard Nixon, and that tiny amount was actually half of the yearly harvest. The tea has a deep, rich taste, and when done right, the tea has a clear orange color and can be brewed many times without losing its flavor. People often describe the taste as slightly floral with a sweet aftertaste that lasts a long time. Since the original trees cannot be used anymore, farmers found a way to grow new ones using cuttings from the originals. These new plants are basically clones and grown in the same area. They are more available, but still keep much of the same taste. The soil in the region plays a big role. It's full of minerals from old volcanic and limestone rock, which gives the tea its unique flavor. Even these newer versions are carefully controlled and graded based on where they're grown, with the best ones coming from spots closest to the original trees. Ayam Cemani chicken. The Ayam Cemani is a breed of chicken from Indonesia, specifically linked to the island of Java, and it's one of the most visually striking animals in the world. Everything is black. Not just the feathers, but the skin, the bones, the muscle tissue, the organs, and even the blood are all darkly pigmented. This pigmentation is caused by a genetic condition called fibromelanosis, which triggers an overproduction of melanin throughout the entire body. The breed has been around for centuries in Indonesia and was historically connected to spiritual and ceremonial practices. Owning one was considered a sign of prosperity, and they were sometimes used in rituals believed to bring good fortune. In Western markets, a single Ayam Cemani chicken can fetch anywhere from $200 to over $2,500 depending on the quality of the lineage and the breeder. Part of the cost comes from the extreme rarity of quality specimens and the difficulty of breeding them while maintaining the full pigmentation trait consistently across generations. From a culinary standpoint, the meat itself has a flavor that's often described as richer and more intense than conventional chicken, gamier, with a deeper savory quality that some compare to a free-range game bird. The texture is slightly leaner and firmer. The skin, when cooked, turns an unusual dark color. Interestingly, the eggs are not black. They are cream-colored with a slight pinkish tint, which is one of the few parts of the bird that doesn't carry the heavy pigmentation. The meat is not widely commercialized at scale, so most purchases happen through specialty breeders and farms rather than conventional markets. Almas caviar. Almas caviar comes from the beluga sturgeon of the Caspian Sea, but what separates almas from ordinary beluga caviar is the age and specific genetic characteristics of the fish it comes from. The word almas means diamond in Persian, which fits given what it costs. A kilogram can run anywhere from $25,000 to over $34,000. The beluga sturgeon is already one of the most ancient fish on the planet, with a lineage that stretches back over 200 million years. It grows slowly and doesn't begin producing eggs until it's around 20 years old. The females that yield almost caviar are typically albino specimens that are at least 60 to 100 years old. Age has a significant effect on flavor, and older fish tend to produce eggs with a more refined, nuanced quality. The roe itself is pale, almost golden or translucent, rather than the dark gray or black associated with standard beluga. The flavor profile of top-grade beluga caviar is clean and buttery, with a delicate brininess that never feels sharp or fishy. The eggs are large, sitting in the range of 3 to 4 millimeters across, and they have a satisfying smooth pop when pressed against the palate. Almost takes all of those qualities and intensifies them, softer and creamier with a long finish that is almost sweet. People use a spoon made from shell instead of metal so it doesn't affect the taste. It's often eaten with champagne or very cold vodka, which helps balance the richness. Its age, rarity, and unique look keep it at the very top of luxury foods. Black ivory coffee. Black ivory coffee is produced in Thailand using a process that involves Asian elephants eating coffee cherries and passing them through their digestive systems before the beans are collected, cleaned, and roasted. The company behind it works with elephants at an ethical sanctuary in northern Thailand's Golden Triangle region, where the animals are rescued from logging and street begging, not bred for commercial purposes. The process sounds unusual, but there is a real chemistry behind why it produces a different cup. Elephants are herbivores with long digestive tracts, and the roughly 15 to 30 hours the cherries spend moving through the animal exposes the beans to a range of enzymes and fermentation processes that break down the proteins responsible for bitterness. The result is coffee that is notably low in bitterness and acidity, with a smooth, rounded body. The flavor profile is consistently described as chocolate-forward, with notes of tamarind, sometimes with a hint of grass or faint earthiness, and an almost tea-like delicacy. It's not an aggressive or powerful cup. It's subtle, nuanced, and surprisingly clean. Part of why it's so expensive, typically around $50 per cup at hotels that serve it, or roughly $1,500 per kilogram, is pure yield. It takes around 33 kilograms of raw coffee cherries to produce a single kilogram of finished black ivory coffee, because elephants eat a lot of surrounding plant matter and not every cherry survives the journey intact. The company donates a portion of its proceeds to elephant welfare programs, which adds another dimension to the purchase. Saffron. Saffron is a spice made from tiny red threads inside a purple flower, and it's been the most expensive seasoning in the world for thousands of years. The threads come from a plant called Crocus sativus, which only blooms for a short time each fall. What makes the saffron so expensive is how much work it takes to produce. Each flower only has 3 threads, and they all have to be picked by hand early in the morning before the flowers wilt. It takes around 150,000 to 200,000 flowers just to make 1 kilogram of saffron, which means hours and hours of careful labor. People have been growing and trading saffron for over 3,500 years. It was used as a medicine, as a dye, and as a valuable cooking ingredient. The quality depends on natural compounds that give it its taste, smell, and strong golden color. The best saffron is made only from the deep red tips of the threads, with none of the yellow parts attached. Because of its value, it's often called red gold, and even a small amount can completely change a dish. It has a very unique taste, it's slightly sweet, a bit earthy, and has a light floral flavor. You only need a few threads to flavor a whole pot of rice or a big dish. Since it's so expensive, it's often faked. Some sellers mix it with cheaper materials like other plant fibers or even colored paper. Real saffron slowly turns water yellow while the threads stay red, which is a simple way to check if it's real. You can grow saffron at home, but it needs the right conditions like hot, dry summers and soil that drains well. The plant doesn't produce seeds, so it has to be grown by splitting and replanting the bulbs underground. This makes it slow to spread and fully dependent on people to grow it. Even today, saffron is still picked by hand because the flowers are too delicate for machines. Densuke black watermelon. The Densuke watermelon is a dark, shiny fruit grown only on the island of Hokkaido. It stands out for being sweeter and crunchier than regular watermelons. This rare type is grown in a small town called Toma, where the climate and rich soil help it develop its special taste and texture. It first appeared in 1981, where local farmers wanted a more profitable crop instead of rice, and over time it became a symbol of luxury farming in Japan. The name was officially registered in 1989, and only melons that pass strict quality checks get the real label. Like other high-end fruits in Japan, Densuke watermelons are often sold at special auctions. The first harvest of the season can go for thousands of dollars. In 2008, one melon weighing about 17 pounds sold for around $6,100. Farmers keep production low, and each melon is carefully turned by hand while it grows so the color stays even and the surface stays perfect. Before being sold, they are polished until they shine and packed in a fancy box. Inside, the Densuke has bright red flesh with fewer seeds than normal, which makes it easier to eat. It's known for having a higher sugar level and a firm, crunchy bite. In Japan, it's often seen as the best kind of watermelon and is given as a special gift. Growing these melons takes a lot of space, water, and constant care, which is why there are so few each year. The best ones go to auctions, while others are sold in luxury fruit shops for hundreds of dollars. Poulet cheese. Poulet is a cheese made from the milk of Balkan donkeys, produced only at a single farm called Zasavica, a nature reserve in Serbia. The farm maintains a herd of Balkan donkeys, a breed that itself is considered endangered, and processes their milk into an unusually rare product. A kilogram of poulet typically sells for around $1,000, which makes it one of the most expensive cheeses in the world by weight. The pricing is driven almost entirely by supply. Donkeys produce very small quantities of milk compared to cows or goats, and their milking schedules are irregular and time-consuming. The farm must collect milk from each animal multiple times per day during the lactation period, and it takes roughly 25 liters of donkey milk to produce just 1 kilogram of cheese. Donkey milk is also notably low in casein, the protein that usually allows cheese to set and firm up naturally, which means the cheese-making process requires extra effort and specific techniques to achieve a workable result. The cheese itself is described as crumbly and dry, somewhat similar in texture to a firm Spanish manchego, though whiter and less fatty. The flavor is mild and slightly grainy, with a subtle earthiness and a clean, faintly sweet finish. It doesn't carry the sharpness of aged sheep's milk cheeses or the tangy intensity of aged goat varieties. Some versions are smoked, which adds a layer of depth and gives the exterior a golden hue. Zasavica is not just a cheese-making operation, it's also a conservation effort, and the donkey herd is central to the reserve's mission of protecting the breed. The cheese became globally famous after several news outlets reported it as the world's most expensive, and the demand from international buyers has grown significantly since. Pommard's Vintage Beef. Pommard Vintage Beef is a super high-end steak from France that's kept fresh using a special freezing method called hibernation. Most good beef is aged for a few weeks, but a butcher named Alexander Pommard, whose family has been doing this for generations, found a way to age meat for up to 15 years without it going bad. The trick is blasting the meat with very cold air at high speed in a space that's far below freezing. This quickly freezes the meat and basically pauses it in time, locking in the texture and flavor so it can last for years. The beef comes from a specific type of cow raised by the Pommard family on their own land in eastern France. They focus a lot on keeping the animals calm because stress can make meat tougher and less tasty. One of their most famous cuts is a rib steak from the year 2000, which is one of the rarest and most expensive steaks ever sold. A single piece can cost over $3,000 and is only served in a few top restaurants. Chefs say it's so soft, you barely need a knife, with a deep, rich flavor that builds over the years. The long freezing process gives it a nutty and earthy taste you don't get from normal aging. Pommard is very picky about who can buy his meat. He works closely with chefs and only sells to those he trusts to handle it properly. He sees his work as similar to fine wine, where the year and the process matter just as much as the product itself. For the few people who get to try it, this kind of steak is about as extreme as beef can get, both in price and in how it's made. Yubari King Melons. The Yubari King melon is a very high-end fruit grown in northern Japan, in a place called Hokkaido. Farmers there treat each melon almost like a piece of art. It's a mix of two melon types, but what really makes it special is how carefully it's grown. The soil comes from old volcanic ash, which drains water really well, and the big temperature changes between day and night help the fruit build up more sugar, so it ends up sweeter. Farmers even handle them with gloves and gently clean the outside by hand. Each melon is supported so it grows into a clean, round shape instead of getting flat spots. The goal is not just great taste, but also a perfect look. The first melons of the season are sold at auctions, and sometimes they go for huge prices. In 2019, a pair sold for about $45,000. That kind of sale is mostly for attention and prestige, but even normal top-quality ones can still cost a few $100s in luxury fruit shops. They are graded very strictly. Farmers check how sweet they are, how even the pattern on the skin looks, and how perfectly round they are. The best ones are almost flawless, which is very hard to achieve. The flesh is soft, juicy, and very sweet, almost like a dessert. It has a rich smell and a deeper flavor than regular melons. To get that quality, they are grown in greenhouses where temperature and humidity are controlled all the time. Each plant is only allowed to grow one melon, so all the energy goes into that single fruit. These melons are also important for the local area. The region used to depend on coal mining, but later shifted to growing luxury fruit instead. Only melons grown in that exact area are allowed to use the Yubari name, which helps keep their reputation and price high. Ruby Roman grapes. Ruby Roman grapes are the result of over a decade of research in the Ishikawa prefecture, and they're famous for being huge, about the size of ping pong balls, with very high sugar levels. They were created by a local research center that spent about 14 years trying to grow the biggest and best tasting red grapes possible. When they first came out in 2008, they became popular right away, mostly because they were so rare and hard to grow. Every grape in a bunch has to meet strict rules for size, sweetness, and color before it can be sold under the Ruby Roman name. The process started by planting hundreds of seeds from a large grape variety and only keeping the very best ones. To pass inspection, each grape has to weigh at least 20 grams and be very sweet. There is also a top tier called Premium, where a whole bunch has to weigh over 700 grams and each grape must be even bigger. The standards are so strict that sometimes only a few bunches out of thousands actually qualify. Because of that, a single bunch has once sold for over $10,000, which means each grape can cost hundreds of dollars. Even single grapes can be sold in fancy stores for around $10. Farmers even use phone apps to track how much sunlight each grape gets. Leaves are trimmed by hand, and the grapes are moved around so they all get the right color, a deep red shade. The taste is very sweet and juicy, and when you bite into one, it kind of bursts. They appear in department store fruit selections displayed with the same kind of care given to fine jewelry. The grapes are licensed and strictly controlled, so production remains limited and largely confined to Ishikawa, which keeps supply tight year after year.